He threw the rifle at her feet. The metallic clatter cut through the training yard like an accusation. Conversations halted. Boots froze mid-stride. Several recruits turned just enough to witness the humiliation without risking being called out themselves. And in the center of the gravel, where dust curled around her boots, Sergeant Mara Hale stared at the weapon that had been tossed to her as if she were nothing. The lieutenant's voice slithered across the silence. "Let's see what the legendary sharpshooter can do with that." The weapon's stock was cracked. The rear sight was bent so severely it caught the morning light like a mocking grin. Everyone could see it. Everyone could sense the cruelty woven into the moment. A test, a punishment, a public display meant to break what couldn't be broken. Mara didn't speak. She didn't kneel. She didn't glare. Her silence was a blade of its own. But her heartbeat, slow, deep, disciplined, echoed like distant artillery. And then, without a word, she reached down. The moment her fingers touched the fractured rifle, the murmurs began. A suppressed snicker, a sharp inhale, a whispered, "He's really doing this." Even the wind paused, as if unwilling to disturb the tension hanging over the yard. Across the range, 47 steel targets glimmered under the rising sun, and the lieutenant, jaw sharp, pride sharper, folded his arms. "Hit as many as you can before that thing falls apart," he sneered. The moment felt engineered for her humiliation. Instead, it became the beginning of her legend. But before we step into the full truth behind this confrontation, where are you watching from today? And before we begin the story, please subscribe, because this channel honors the silent warriors, the unseen heroes, and the people who carry storms in their chest yet walk with calm in their eyes. Now, let's begin. Mara Hale had a face carved by discipline, not by harshness. Her eyes, quietly observant, carried a weight that didn't come from age but from memory. There was a way she stood, straight but never rigid, that made people instinctively step aside, sensing she had survived things that leave invisible fractures in a soul. Some Marines talked loud, moved loud, lived loud. Mara existed like a whisper, silent, steady, inevitable. She was the kind of soldier people underestimated until they met her gaze. Today, those same eyes studied the broken rifle. She lifted it carefully, as if respecting the weapon even in its wounded form. Several new recruits watched her with a strange mix of sympathy and awe. One whispered to another, "Why is he doing this to her?" The reply came in a grim murmur, "Because he can." But they were wrong. He thought he could. Years before this moment, before the broken rifle, before the lieutenant's simmering resentment, Mara Hale had stood on another field far from home. Afghanistan. Dawn bleeding into dust. The smell of burned diesel and dry earth. Her unit had been pinned down by insurgents positioned across a jagged ridge. The world felt like a furnace, every breath scraping like sand. Amid the chaos, a young private named Dawson had frozen, terror rooting him in place. Mara remembered the exact sound of his breathing, rapid, uneven, desperate. She remembered placing her hand on his shoulder, steadying him with a voice that barely rose above the gunfire. "You're here. Stay with me." Then she had risen, scanning through the mirage, warped distance. Enemy muzzle flashes flickered like tiny suns. She calculated wind, angle, and heartbeat in seconds, her mind weaving order from chaos. Her first shot silenced the ridge's anchor point, buying her unit a sliver of breathing room. Her second shot cut off the advance. Her third spared Dawson's life. Afterward, command quietly pinned a commendation to her chest. She accepted it without ceremony, thinking only of the faces she couldn't save. The battlefield had shaped her, sharpened her, but grief tempered her steel. She returned home with a reputation she never asked for: Marine sharpshooter, decorated marksman survivor. But reputation breeds envy, and envy, when placed in the hands of insecure authority, becomes dangerous. Lieutenant Carver knew. Ambitious, threatened by her quiet competence, had been waiting for a moment like today. Carver circled the training yard with the swagger of someone who believed fear equaled respect. His voice, sharp as a cold blade, echoed commands that felt more self-serving than instructive. To him, Mara wasn't a Marine. She was a challenge, a mirror reflecting everything he wasn't. He despised how other soldiers looked to her instinctively in moments of uncertainty. How her silence spoke louder than his speeches. How new recruits listened more closely when she corrected their grip or breathing. So today, with the range evaluation on schedule, he saw his opportunity. He dragged a damaged rifle from the supply room, a reject, practically scrap, and tossed it onto the dirt at her feet. His smirk stretched thin across his face, brittle yet venomous. "Since you think you're everyone's hero," he said, "let's see how far your reputation gets you without a proper weapon." The yard went still. Some Marines looked away to avoid becoming collateral, others gulped, uneasy. Mara simply nodded once, a calm gesture that held more authority than his entire posture. Inside, though, something old stirred. Not anger, not defiance. Something quieter, deeper. Resolve born from graves she kept in her chest. Mara stepped forward, inspecting the weapon. The barrel was warped, not enough to explode but enough to make every shot unpredictable. The firing pin was worn. The bolt dragged like it resented movement, and the rear sight was a tragedy of twisted metal. Carver walked behind her, leaning in with breath hot enough to reveal his insecurity. "Should have stayed a legend on paper," he whispered. She didn't flinch. That enraged him. He turned to the gathered troops and raised his voice, dripping disdain. "Hale here thinks she's invincible. Let's see her prove it." His words cast a shadow over the yard, turning the air heavy with discomfort. A few Marines exchanged looks of disbelief. Others swallowed hard, knowing speaking up would mark them as targets too. Authority made cowards of some, prisoners of others. But Mara, she remained untouched by his noise. She lifted the rifle, feeling its imperfections like a doctor assessing a wounded patient. She adjusted her stance, compensating for the bent sight with subtle shifts in shoulder and cheek position. Her breathing slowed until time seemed to obey her cadence. A hidden ally watched Gunnery Sergeant Ruiz, standing at the far edge of the yard, arms crossed, expression unreadable, but in his eyes, quiet fury. A mentor, a friend, a man who owed Mara his life from a night long past, when she had dragged him from the burning remains of an overturned MRAP. Only Mara didn't know he was there, not yet. Targets lined the far range like a constellation of steel stars, 47 of them, spaced unevenly. Designed to challenge even experienced marksmen. With a broken weapon, it bordered on impossible. Carver stepped aside with an exaggerated flourish. "Begin." The word cracked the moment open. Mara inhaled deeply. The scent of oil dust and sun-warmed metal filled her senses. Her fingers wrapped around the rifle's bruised frame with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with its jagged edges. The Marines behind her watched, holding their breath. Her first shot rang out. The bullet missed the center by inches. Laughter erupted from Carver's side, a triumphant scoff rising above the murmurs. Mara ignored him. Her mind spun through calculations, barrel distortion, wind angle, heat shimmer. She adjusted again. Slower this time, trusting instinct over sight. Her second shot hit. The steel plate sang with the impact, a clear metallic chime that swallowed every chuckle. Her third shot hit, her fourth, her fifth. One by one the targets fell under a calm, steady patience. Around her, silence thickened until it felt like an audience trapped between awe and disbelief. Carver's arms folded tighter. The triumph drained from his posture, replaced by unease that crawled up his spine like cold water. She fired again, and again. Each bullet was a whispered truth. Skill is earned, not granted. By the time she hit the 20th target, even the trees along the ridge seemed to lean closer. Sweat glistened on her brow, not from strain but from the sun's rising heat. Her breathing remained steady, guided by years of discipline, rather than desire to prove anyone wrong. But Carver's jaw twitched. His voice broke through the hush with forced bravado. "Beginner's luck," he muttered. Ruiz stepped closer, boots grinding gravel softly. His presence alone shifted the temperature of the scene, though no one dared acknowledge it. He watched her work through the weapon's flaws, predicting the misfires, compensating for the skewed sight picture, coaxing accuracy from something designed to betray her. At the 30th target, he finally spoke, not to her, but loud enough for every Marine and every cowardly silence to hear. "That rifle shouldn't be on the range," he said, voice deep and calm. Carver stiffened. "With respect, Gunny." Ruiz's stare cut him off. "You don't give her that weapon unless you want her to fail." The truth rippled through the formation like a wind that finally broke free. Carver's lips tightened. She accepted it. Ruiz stepped even closer. "She accepted it because she's a Marine. But I'm watching, and so is everyone else." A murmur swept through the crowd. A shift so subtle yet so powerful it made Carver's confidence shrink like a punctured lung. Mara didn't break her silence. Didn't turn. Didn't look away from the targets. She simply fired again. As she approached the 40th target, a private whispered to another. "She's not fighting him. No. She's fighting the idea that she can be broken." From somewhere within the ranks, someone murmured the words that would later echo across social media. Real strength doesn't raise its voice, it raises the standard. And from Ruiz, watching with quiet pride, honor isn't loud, it's consistent. These weren't slogans. They were the truth unfolding right in front of them. The rifle shuddered with each shot now, its failures stacking like fatigue in metal form. But Mara's control only deepened. She slowed. She recalculated. Each time the weapon hesitated, she adapted. The 45th target fell, then the 46th. Carver was pale now, the kind of pale that comes when a man realizes he set a trap for someone else, but fell into his own reflection instead. His pride shook beneath the weight of her silence. Mara inhaled, deep, calm, anchored. Her final shot cracked through the yard. The 47th target clanged, spun, and toppled. For a moment, no one moved. Then the silence shifted, not into cheers, but into something deeper, heavier, more sacred, respect. Dozens of Marines straightened unconsciously, spines forming a line of honor she had earned without a single word of complaint. Ruiz stepped beside her, placing one hand on her shoulder, a gesture of pride, not pity. He turned to the formation. She just hit 47 targets, he said, voice steady. With a rifle that shouldn't even fire. The truth settled over the yard like a verdict. And the verdict was humiliating, but not for Mara. Ruiz faced Carver. No anger, just certainty. Lieutenant, he said quietly, you owe this Marine an apology. Carver's throat bobbed. Pride battled accountability in his eyes. The Marines waited. Not with hostility, but with expectation. He approached Mara slowly, swallowing the shards of his arrogance. When he spoke, his voice cracked with something resembling sincerity. I was out of line, he said. You deserved better. Mara finally lifted her gaze. Her silence wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't vengeful either. It was simply truth. She nodded once, and that single nod carried more weight than any sentence he could have crafted. In the end, it wasn't the broken rifle that mattered. It wasn't even the 47 targets. It was the reminder that some battles are fought in full view of others. But the real victory happens quietly, in the space where dignity refuses to bow. Silent strength does not shout. It simply stands, and in standing it changes everything around it. If this story moved you, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And if you believe in honoring the quiet warriors, the unseen heroes, and the people who walk through storms without asking for applause, make sure to subscribe. More stories like this are coming. Stories that remind us what real honor looks like.